Hello and welcome to the Franz van Kat interview. I'm Annette Young. The tiny Gulf kingdom of Bahrain has been torn apart since protests by the country's Shiite Muslims broke out in February. They're demanding the ruling family, who are Sunni, should implement political reform. Now, hundreds were arrested in the crackdown that followed. The niceties of law were abandoned, with dozens being put on trial in military courts. Washington was noticeably silent, not surprisingly, as many pointed out, given the strategic Gulf state is a Western ally and also home to the American Navy's Fifth Fleet. But a government-appointed commission into the crackdown did indeed confirm the systematic torture and abuse of those who were arrested. Now, joining me here in the studio is Khalil Al-Mazouk, a spokesman for Al-Wifaq, a Shiite opposition party in Bahrain. First of all, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Let's talk about relations between the Sunnis and the Shiites. Now, they've reached an all-time low, haven't they? What is it like at the moment, given that you are a Shiite? What is it like to be a Shiite in Bahrain?
I just want to be treated like a citizen, rather than Shiite or a Sunni. The principle of citizenship is absent in my country, and the regime is trying hard to split the people in Shiite and the Sunnis.
But it's become noticeably worse, obviously, since the crackdown began, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's that they're trying to use this as a strategic weapon against the people who are calling for democracy by splitting up the community into two sects. Actually, it's not into two sects. It's into a pro-democracy people fighter and those who are fearing the government, so that's they tend to be pro-government and trying to say that we're protecting the government or we are better with the government.
And there are Sunnis who support what?
Yeah, definitely. The first detainee was a Sunni, Mohammed Bouflasa. A prominent leader, Ibrahim Sharif, he is a Sunni. He is also leftist, so he is not Islamist. So the situation in Bahrain has nothing to do with sectarian. But the authorities in Bahrain trying to break it as sectarian issues just to win this battle.
But for you personally, has life become that much more difficult in Bahrain?
Definitely. It's usual that a person in Bahrain fears when he think about bringing child and their education, their future, and this start like this, is that you have very fearful, although and sometimes it's different. I don't want to exaggerate the situation, but you fear that at any moment you will be in detention, you will be not having a proper job, you might be banned from traveling, you might be questioned while traveling and coming back. So this situation, because of the absence of democracy, because of the absence of human rights, a dictatorial system in a place in Bahrain, and before we transform it to a democratic, and we are not calling for the same democracy that the Tunisians are calling or the Egyptians are calling, because we want to maintain the monarchy in Bahrain with specific authorities going to the people rather than concentrated in the king's hands.
You want to keep the monarchy in its place?
Yes, because of different aspects. I think it will be too difficult to Bahrain to topple the regime and change it to Republican.
Do you think relations between the two communities have passed a point of no return? Can you see a day coming when, in fact, things could be better?
I don't see a problem between the two main sects in the community. The problem is the ruling family is trying to pretend and make up things that there are severe issues within the community. It's not. Once there is a political decision to move ahead with political reform, everything could be easily and swiftly move into reconciliation.
Now, the protests have continued. Just in the last few days, there's been protests along one of the country's main highways, Badaya Highway. Clearly, despite the crackdown, despite this government report that came out a month ago, tensions are still high.
Yeah, definitely. The people now feeling, especially inspired by the Arab Spring, is that either dignity or to be slaves, and the people will continue to seek their dignity, and no way to retreat or go back to prior to 14 February. We have lived with this authority decades of time. Every moment they don't seize, they abuse it, like the referendum on the independence of Bahrain, when everyone was saying we want an independent country other than being belonging to Iran. When we get into the 1973 constitution, when we gave the monarchy or the royal family some authorities, but to share it with people by they dissolved the parliament in 1975. When we got into referendum in 2001, and an autonomous constitution came in 2002. So the abuses are coming from the authorities rather from the people. So now they cannot go with fake steps or fake dialogue to establish reform.
And in fact, your party, along with other opposition parties, has called on the king to embark on serious dialogue to end the crisis. What has been the response from the royal?
Not just the opposition parties, it's President Barack Obama, Ban Ki-moon, all President Sarkozy.
But what has been the response?
The response is trying to make something that is fake response to those, calling a national consensus dialogue by bringing 320 personalities pro-government and leaving the opposition only 25 personalities of that. And they said, okay, we've responded to the international call for a dialogue. A serious dialogue has to happen between the opposition and the ruling family, the representative of the king, and they should address seriously the simple principle of democracy is that the people are the source of authorities, and we have an elected government. These are the main things that the people want, with legislative authority having a good oversight of the government, fair district distribution, independent judicial, and inclusive security. These are basic principles, basic mandatories for a good state, to talk about a state rather than an elite ruling a country.
But the king did commission that government inquiry into allegations, and as it was proved to be in fact the case, of systematic abuse and torture of those arrested, predominantly Shiite Muslims. That was a bold move, and certainly no other Arab leader in the region has done something like that. Do you get the sense that, I mean, in your opinion, that's not enough? As far as you see it.
Unfortunately, this is a good step, but this step has to be complemented with implementation. If the outcome when the BICI, the Bahraini Independent Commission of Inquiry, is talking, Mr. Bassiouni talking in front of the king and in front of the whole royal family.
Mr. Bassiouni being the person who's responsible for holding the inquiry.
Yes, the chairman of the commission, and he publicly was saying to the king, "Your government has killed, has demolished mosques, have arrested people illegally, have sentenced people illegally, have sacked people from their jobs or from schools, and created all of the things. They used the media to attack your people." And the king was keeping silent, not sacking this government. The king was keeping silent, not reinstating the whole employees, 4,400 being reinstated immediately. The king was keeping silent, not to free all those detainees and sentence people, when Bassiouni was saying these were charged illegally. So this is the important thing. And 2 days after, the king have established a commission not to be in compliance with the BICI report. It was something repeated again and again, is that the majority pro-government and the minority is as opposition. And instead of implementing the recommendation, they just follow and put another recommendation. Where are we going with recommendation after recommendation? Seriously, we need to stop violation against the people. Seriously, we need to establish our institutions to be preventive from having more violation to human rights. But more importantly, we need democracy. The people in Bahrain calling, when is our elected government going to happen? This is the key question.
Now, the other thing, as I was pointing out when I introduced this interview, is the fact that Washington has been noticeably very quiet on all of this. We all seem to know the reason why, primarily because Bahrain is seen as a strategic ally in the region. It's home to America's 5th Naval Fleet. Do you believe that they could still do more, however?
Unfortunately, the strategic alliances, they think about it only with the dictators rather than the people. I can tell them that your strategic interest with the people rather than with few of these countries, especially in the elite regime, because they are not serving you. They are distorting the image of the international community.
Are you disappointed with President Obama?
The speeches that President Obama delivers is very good, excellent. Unfortunately, we don't see actions about these speeches. When he addressed the General Assembly in September lately, when he called upon the government to establish a dialogue with Al-Wifaq, but this is no action has been taken. I think we have sympathy from international community. We need to transfer this into an action. And in response to your question is that there are lots of things can be happening in Bahrain swiftly without toppling the regime, but with some pressures, with a time scale or framework, and with a roadmap to establish democracy and stopping human rights violation, we can achieve lots of things.
And I assume that's the reason why you're here in Paris at the moment, is to talk to the French government as such, because it's not just the Americans that you're looking towards either, is it?
It is everyone, and we appreciate the role of France as a very important country in the international politics, as well as its role in the EU. And from these perspectives, we call upon all our friends and strategic alliance.
Are you being received with open ears, though?
Yeah. As I put it in a very small statement, we have sympathy, but we need actions to be taken.
Khalil Al-Mazouk, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for being with us. And that's it for this edition of the Frans van Kaat interview. Stay tuned for more news and headlines, which are coming up very shortly. Thank you.